Good morning, world. Good morning, Bahamas. Today is the last day. I call it the Fool's Month, April. And boy, we are being made a fool of in so many ways this month. In my own way, I'm trying to educate the population of the Bahamas. And this one is right in the laps of Renville Wells, who was an engineer. I don't know why he's not Ministry of Works Minister, because that's his studies. He would know that better than transport and local government, because he's not good at either of those. I dropped something in his lap, the amount of $60,000 being stolen from the Dunderstown Town Committee and his people directly involved, and to date, no rebut. But this story is much bigger than the stealing in Dunderstown Township. This one is mind-boggling, and I've seen it for many years because I too was a captain, and I see it throughout Abaco. People that use our country and don't give a hell. In America, that's how we know about it. That's how Renville Well knows about it. But he ain't got the brains or the internal fortitude to follow up on what has been a widespread practice of disrespect in the Bahamas. I'm going to use some strong words here, rightfully so, because there's some strong smell as being encamping our Bahama waters. World, Bahamas, Bahamians, you imagine a cruise ship that enters your water to bring people to this pristine country has been dumping for years over 50 million tons of sewage into our waters. But that's not a bad thing. For the first time, I didn't even know that this exists, that the Bahamas government was paying these cruise ships to come and maybe spend money. That's why we are so way back in our debt, because of stupid ministries. You're paying a cruise ship to bring people, and maybe they'll spend $1.50 in the shops in Nassau, and they dumping millions of gallons of sewage into our waters. That's not the hard part, you know. That's the hard part. We're paying them to disrespect our water. And remember, on those cruise ships, some of those people come on their final cruise. They got AIDS, syphilis, gonorrhea. Every disease you name in the world is on that cruise ship, and they dumping it into our food chain. Our fish is eating, our marine life is eating it. And Renville Wells right there, go down by the port, you bad. Let me show you how disrespectful they are. Look overboard there, when you see that brown water come out the side of the boat, that is raw sewage. Why you think we have conch poisoning now? And it's gonna get worse because there's no measures. These are the legislation that they should be putting in place, that anybody be found dumping sewage in our water should be getting fined millions. But I would call this, in our ministry, asses and idiots. The reason I can use those big words of our ministers is because in the court of America, in the courts in America, Carnival Cruise Ship was being found $40 million. They are being found guilty. The record is there of dumping in our waters. The Americans collected $40 million. And guess what? Our esteemed Minister Renville Wells, the minister who has this degree in engineering, what his response is. he's gonna do an investigation. That is why I call him an ass and an idiot. You don't have to do any investigation, Renville. The investigation have already been completed. And this is not the first time the Americans them threaten them that if they do it again, they would find them. And they did it again. They had people on the cruise ship that witnessed this. And the Americans got 40 million. Boy, we could use that 40 million to build a police station in Abaco, to build a new school. But Renville Wells said he's going to do an investigation. Renville, wise up, brother. Or resign. I think better still, you should resign. Because the Americans have already did the investigation. But guess what? They didn't dump this in Jamaican waters. They didn't dump these stuff in Barbadian water. They didn't dump it in Turks and Caicos water. They didn't dump it in no other Caribbean country. They dump it in the Bahamas waters because they know that we have asses and idiot as leaders, and they're going to do the investigation after the courts in the Americas have found Carnival guilty. Renville Wells say he's going to do an investigation. Wise up, idiot. The investigation have already been completed, and the Americans won. They ain't dump it in America water, Renville. They dump it in the Bahamas water. It was found out the other day that they dumped nuclear waste right behind Manawaki. Nuclear waste, been doing it for years, the Americans. Which Bahamian government got the balls to put them in international court and collect? We have billions of dollars that we can collect from them dumping nuclear waste behind Manawa. That's where they dumped it. The evidence is there. And no government got the balls to put these people in court. Bahamas. The Americans have already did the investigation. They have collected $40 million from the cruise ship, while our minister saying he is going to do his investigation. Well, hallelujah. Right here, Mr. Renville Wells, let me give you some more education, because the courts of America have already educated you. You seems not to know what to do in your ministry. That's why I, as a Bahamian, was so proud when they would move these ministers. Every 2 years, they would put them into new ministry, because some of them can be educated, and maybe the ones that are educated would wise up and educate the other ministry. But we're stuck with these jokers for 5 years. Right here in Abaco, it's an explosion of rental boats, ships, the mooring Sunsail, the biggest register in Abaco, over 40 boats. You know where they jump their sewage? Right in the harbor. Go by the boats there, right out there. I see sometimes people snorkeling in the sewage, raw shit, just coming out the boat. You go down to Dream Yacht Charters. Where are they dumping their sewage? They have holding tanks, you know. But because they're so gutless and weightless, and they know that this country don't care, they act like they care. What happened to all the friends in the Bahamas and all these other groups that claims to be environmentalists? Do they have enough brains to know what is being dumped in our water? We have now close to 100 boats, sailboats and powerboats that rent every week. And while the people are out, they are ordered to flush the sewage, the raw sewage, Tampax, paper, tissue, bleach, Clorox, detergent, dump it into our waters. And you know how long this has been happening? For decades. And there's no legislation to stop this. But just the other day, America are more concerned of what's going on. America is doing more investigation. Renville Wells go down by the port right there in Nassau, and when them cruise ship come in, they don't even wait. Some of them don't even have the respect. They dump it right in your harbor because they know you can't figure if 5 ships there, which one is dumping the sewage and the raw garbage into the Nassau Harbor, and they're going right downstream. That is the conch that they're eating. The conch that are eating sewage. The fish that are eating raw sewage and coming into our chain. That's why we have so much cancer and all this stuff in the Bahamas, because that same thing called tourism, it's good, but it's bad when you don't have the legislation nor the ministry, the government, to put forth legislation to stop the abuse of our environment. Raw sewage into the food chain, the lobster, the conch, the fish. We eating sewage from these same people that's supposed to be here enjoying our tranquil waters. They are destroying it, while the Minister Renwell Wells is still doing his investigation. The Americans have already collected 40 million, Renwell. I could keep saying that a while, boy, that's mind-boggling. They collected 40 million while you're still doing your investigation. In the back of Manawar, my hometown, the Americans were dumping nuclear waste in the back of there for years. They admit to it. What did we get out of it? Nothing. Because our government can balls up to put them in international court. If the America could get $40 million and it was not dumped in American waters, shouldn't the Bahamas be getting some proceeds from that? A matter of fact, the Americans should be giving us that $40 million because we're the one that are being affected, should be affected, and will be affected by all that raw, contaminated sewage. Renwell Wells, wise up or resign. This is the kind of information that Kai watch with on television. And guess what? All the news media in the Bahamas, the journalists that went to school, they only could see foolishness, something that is meaningful. I've never heard about it on ZNS, Channel 12 News, Radio Abaco, Island Lock TV, ZNS Northern Division. None of them has talked about these stories. They would start a story and they will stop it before its entirety. That is not professional journalism. You see the story through. All these networks, the biggest story in the Bahamas, raw sewage for years, and it's still continuing, and there's no legislation to stop the flow of sewage into our water, into our fish, into our conch, into our lobster. This is huge, and you're only hearing from it live Tuesday, the last day of the full month of April, on WCAY. Kai cares. While all them playing minister, Kai let you know that they ought not be minister. They need to resign because this sewage is affecting every aspect of our marine environment. Kai cares. WCAY.